A very warm welcome to you, to my thought for the day. Today we're going to look at a beautiful story of something that happened on the very day that Jesus rose from the dead. And it happened to two people who were obviously followers of Jesus, but not two of the 12. And it's called the road to Emmaus, the experience on the road to Emmaus. We find it in Luke chapter 24, starting at verse 13. It's a beautiful story. Let me read it. That very day, two of them were going to a village named Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing together, Jesus himself drew near and went with them. But their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What is this conversation which you are holding with each other as you walk?" And they stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, named Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these days?" And he said to them, "What things?" And they said to him, "Concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and rulers delivered him up to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since this happened. Moreover, some women of our company amazed us. They were at the tomb early in the morning and did not find his body. And they came back saying that they'd even seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but him they did not find, they did not see." And he said to them, "O foolish men and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them in all the scriptures the things concerning himself. So they drew near to the village to which they were going. He appeared to be going further, but they constrained him, saying, "Stay with us, for it is toward evening, and the day is now far spent." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at table with them, he took the bread and blessed it, and broke it, and gave it to them. And their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished out of their sight. They said to each other, "Did not our hearts burn within us while he talked to us on the road, while he opened to us the scriptures?" And they rose that same hour and returned to Jerusalem. And they found the 11 gathered together, and those who were with them, who said, "The Lord has risen indeed, and has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road, and how he was known to them in the breaking of the bread. And then it goes on to say, as they were saying this, Jesus himself stood among them. So we have this sequence of events, the women going to the tomb, Peter and John going to check up on what the women said and seeing the empty tomb and the cloths lying and the napkin that had been round his head folded in another place. But Jesus hadn't appeared to them yet. He appeared to them all after these two got back from walking on the road to Emmaus. Now, it says 7 miles in my Bible here, but it's got a footnote that says there's some uncertainty that the town of Emmaus hasn't, unless it's recently, hasn't ever really been found archaeologically. So we don't know exactly where it was. But if it was as far as some interpreters say, it would be far too far for them to have gone and come back in the same day. So 7 or 7.5 miles is about right, we think, for this. But that's quite a long walk. An average walker will do something like 4 miles an hour. So we're talking about a good 2 hours walk for these two people. And they were talking on this road. And then, of course, when the Lord had appeared to them, they hastened back. So They came back, they walked the whole distance back again to get to Jerusalem to meet up with the 11 who were there. So we know that neither of these people were any of the actual apostles, the 11. Of course, they no longer counted Judas among the 12. And we know this is Cleopas. Now, it's interesting that the name Cleopas or Clopas comes up in John chapter 19, verse 25, at the cross. Standing by the cross of Jesus was his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. There were 4 women there at the foot of the cross, and one of them was called Mary, the wife of Clopas. And it's highly unlikely, I would think, that there was another Clopas or Cleopas in the company of people who were following closely after Jesus. So many people think that these 2 people were Cleopas and his wife who had stood at the foot of the cross and watched Jesus die. Here they are, they're walking and they're talking, and Jesus comes close to them, and it's such a graphic picture of what many people's journey to faith is like. That they start off knowing about Jesus, knowing things that happened to Jesus. Most people know the story of the crucifixion of Jesus. In the Western world, it's unlikely that anybody doesn't know the story. They may not know the significance of it, but they know the story. Haven't you heard about all the things that have happened? And they talk about this, and it was fresh in their minds, of course, because it was only 3 days previously that the horrific crucifixion, the trial and the crucifixion of Jesus had taken place. And it was graphic in their minds. It was a horrific death. It was dreadful. It was, and anyone who's been close to anyone who's died recently, that's what their mind is full of. But this was more than that. This was the person that they had been following, that they had been learning from and watching. They'd seen him perform miracles. They'd seen him do amazing things. They'd heard his wise teaching. We don't know how long they'd been following Jesus, but they're spoken of as 2 of them, 2 of those who were in the company of Jesus. And they told him all about it, and we had hoped he was the one to redeem Israel. And that makes me think that perhaps they were there, or if not there, they knew about the entry into Jerusalem on the donkey that Jesus made a week earlier. And they knew that everyone hoped this was going to be the week, the start of the new kingdom, when the king would take up his residence in Jerusalem. He'd ridden into his capital city on the donkey, as he'd been promised in the prophets. And then they say, and this is the 3rd day since all these dreadful things have happened. And some of the women amazed us. They went to the tomb early, didn't find his body, and came back saying that they'd even seen a vision of angels. The way they describe it is they're obviously doubting whether it's true. They told us they even said they'd seen angels. That's what they even said they'd seen angels. My goodness, the hysterical women. You can hear it in the voice of this man as he tells the story. And then Jesus explains. I've talked about this before when I've talked about Nicodemus, that these people of faith in his time, in Jesus' time, they needed to rethink their understanding of everything Old Testament because they didn't see it relating to him. And they needed to see the Old Testament as it related to Jesus, to see it and understand the scriptures that applied to Jesus and his life on earth and his death and resurrection. They needed to know. And the wonderful thing they said was, did not our hearts burn within us when he talked to us about the scriptures? And this is the revelation that comes from a knowledge of Jesus, an academic knowledge of Jesus, knowledge of what he did, a witnessing of what he did, to an understanding of who he is and why he did it. And a deep understanding. that comes from the Holy Spirit burning within their hearts and revealing Jesus to them. And it was a moment later, really, that he was revealed in person to them. They understood who he was and they recognized him. They weren't at the Last Supper, so I don't think they saw Jesus break bread, but this makes me think that often when they had sat for a meal, Jesus would have taken the bread and given thanks for it and broken it to share with those who were following him. I think it must have been a normal practice for him because as he did it, they knew who he was. And when you know who Jesus is, it changes everything. When you know who Jesus really is, when you understand the enormity of the fact that God became man and died on the cross and rose again, when that impacts, it goes very, very deep. And as we follow him, it goes deeper and deeper and more profound each time we think about it. God bless you. Have a great day. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.